Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this edition of the Flying Midwest podcast. We're going to go a little away from our normal format for this episode to talk about the tragic incidents that have happened in aviation in the last week. We've had some awful events that have rocked the aviation community, and I think to both honor the individuals who have lost their lives in this, as well as those that are working and putting together the aftermath, I think it's important that we talk about this.
Yeah, well, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention and touch on the rough week that aviation had. Obviously, there was the mid-air crash outside of Reagan National Airport, DCA, and then like less than 36 hours later, the medevac crash in Philly. So we're not going to get into, obviously, talking about what other people think happened and all of that. We're here to just extend our thoughts and prayers with all of those affected, whether it's family members of victims, the controllers that were working the situation, the witnesses that saw it with their own eyes, and obviously the first responders as well who responded to all of these and worked tirelessly, whether it was through the night in the cold water in D.C. or in the crummy weather conditions in Philly. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all of them.
So last week, in late January of 2025, we had our first fatal airline accident in almost 2 decades. Near Washington, D.C., an American Eagle flight operated by PSA Airlines, Flight 5342, collided with a Black Hawk Army helicopter during a check ride. It was a clear, cold night, and both aircraft, unfortunately, had a mid-air collision and crashed in the Potomac River. All 67 people unfortunately passed away. The NTSB investigation is ongoing, and we await further details.
I know that for us, my initial reaction when I heard the airlines is Trevor all right? Because that is the airlines he's currently flying with. I think both Maddie and I connected with him fairly early after this, and he's good to go. But it's certainly that's going to hit home for everyone at that airlines, and he's flown that approach a number of times. He's been flying into the airport a lot lately, so I'm sure that there's going to be an impact psychologically for anyone who flies into that airport. I think. I don't know a better way to put that or to wrap that up, but it's there. There's such an impact that goes just beyond those just initially, involved, whether it's family, friends, loved ones. The impact is far and wide on this one. But it's been 16 years since there's been a fatal loss of life commercial aircraft incident in our country. So this is going to resonate, I think, pretty hard with people.
Yeah, I think the entire aviation community is rocked, and so is, I think, which is something we, don't think about very often, is public faith in the industry. We've gone so long and made so many amazing positive changes in the safety aspect of aviation that people forget that things can break, accidents can happen, stuff can, we're human still, and we have human-made machines, and we're doing things that no human was designed to do, but we do it anyway. And because we do it anyway, there are things that happen, even though this one, like most accidents, was just the hole in the Swiss cheese that it made it through. Usually things are stopped, things happen, but in this case, unfortunately, those didn't. Now we don't know what happened with the Philly crash. We still don't know. We'll have to wait on the NTSB report, but even still, we have to wait on this one as well. We're not ones to speculate, and it's good to talk about it, but we're not going to make any bold claims as to what happened. But we do know that we have to keep doing our jobs, and we're all in GA. Andrew, Jim, and I are all in general aviation, but we still have a job to do. We're all trying to become instructors, and we are teaching those people who are going to be in those cockpits, several years from now. So we have to keep being professionals. We have to keep emphasizing safety and do the things that we've been doing, because the public eye is on us now, I think, a little bit more. But yeah, it's horrible that it happened. But statistics, it was bound to happen at some point, unfortunately. But we don't like to see it happen.
I think to add to that point, I think we've been seeing it for a couple of years now. And I think part of it is born out of the 24-hour news cycle that you have to report something big and sensational, right? So all these like quote unquote near misses at these airports that frankly, yes, an incident happened, but it was mitigated, it was stopped, and people learn from it, we move on, right?
Right.
And I think between pilots, air traffic controllers, you put people in a position of public trust like this. And we see the same thing in law enforcement, where how many interactions do these people have every single day? How many flights are successfully completed? How many law enforcement contacts are completed every single day without incident that go just fine and people get a valuable service? We don't talk about that, right? But you have an incident that pops up and the media grabs it, and I'm going on a soapbox here for a second, but people start having their opinions. Everyone thinks they're an expert on everything, and I heard this on the internet, so it has to be true, right? So you got all these internet experts that are now claiming this, that, or the other thing is fact, right?
Right.
When reality, and this is my moment where I'll say how important it is to wait for an investigation to play out, whether it be this, that, or the other thing. But in this specific instance, the NTSB, I think, did a really great job with their press conference a couple of days ago, where they said, we will look at literally thousands of points of data. We'll look at thousands of points of evidence, and we will figure out what happened, because that's what we do. Out of tragedy comes knowledge that this doesn't, so that we can make this not happen again.
Right.
So with that, though, there's so much that these people have to go through. And with my investigative background, I've worked with the NTSB a couple times on GA accidents, and these people are the utmost professionals. They treat everything with the utmost of compassion when they're dealing with families, and I'm certain that the NTSB will do their part here to help us figure out what happened and help to, offer some recommendations to prevent an incident like this in the future.
So let me ask you guys this.
That was my soapbox. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
I feel like I wanted a tangent.
Yeah.
No, not really.
That's fine.
You totally went.
So let me ask you guys this then. We're recording this on February 3rd, 2025. And as it is today, I know the FAA shut down that particular helicopter route that was being used that night. But let's say that didn't happen and that helicopter route's still in play, and we know what we know, and here we are February 3rd. If you're taking a flight into DCA, do you still feel comfortable? Do you feel safe taking that flight, or are you pausing to think about it a little bit?
I think the general populace, they're going to pause and think about it. Me, personally, I think people are going to be all that much more cautious in that environment. Controllers, pilots, everybody, they're going to be head on a swivel. They're going to be extra communicative, I think, because no one wants that again on their watch, right?
There is no...
I can't imagine what those controllers went through.
Horrible.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they all saw it. You can hear it in the tapes.
Yep.
Now, I think there is no safer time to fly than right now, because everybody's on high alert. And not saying that normally it isn't a safe time to fly, but, everybody has their eyes on the problem areas, at least the ones that are being identified day to day. And I think that's really important. And that's why, in my opinion, reading NTSB reports is super important, or listening to them if that's your preference. But being aware of how things have changed and why they changed, because this airspace is not how it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And neither have the rules. Everything's different now. And it's like that on purpose because of accidents like these. And I think it's really valuable, just like you said, Jim, about, we learn so much out of these accidents. It's horrible. It sucks having to read them. It really is not fun. But the things that we can glean from them and how to operate and what to look for, what to avoid, it's invaluable.
But to a certain extent, the airspace's not the same as it was 20, 30, 50 years ago. But for all those, Jim mentioned the keyboard warriors earlier that said there's no reason that this, that, or the other thing should be in place. And a lot of people argue about training helicopter routes and all that stuff. Look, these routes have been in place for a very long time. I went back the other day and started just YouTubing DCA River Visual, Potomac River Visual. Every single one of these videos, you hear a call out for traffic, usually a helicopter low. These routes are designed to be safe, and should they be evaluated? Maybe. But for all those people saying there's no reason for that plane to have been where it was, or that helicopter to have been where it was, or whatever, the system as a whole generally works as long as it's being followed. And obviously there must have been some sort of deviation from that. But the system that's in place is designed specifically to keep people safe. And when we hear about these near misses, that's the system working to prevent things from this. When we hear about planes having to do go-arounds or abort takeoffs because of incursions or something like that, that is the system working to keep us safe. So hopefully, I realize the general public sees that and thinks it's just the Wild West out there and it's chaos, but these near misses we have the systems in place to keep them as near misses. And I think sometimes in tragedy we forget that. So that's the last thing I'll say about that.
I think too that like we are in a business of dealing with humans, and not a single one of us on this planet is perfect.
Yep.
People make mistakes, and having these, having a go around, having, aborted takeoffs, it's, yes, an error may have occurred, but it's been mitigated, right? So I guess all that to say, I guess back to my original point of, I refuse at this point in the process to try to assess blame or who should have been where, doing what, when, why, how. There is way too much that we don't know that still needs to be investigated. And let's wait for the reports to come out and be what they will. And again, through this tragedy, hopefully there can be some knowledge that we can take away to make the industry safer.
Things will change. What will change is going to depend on what the NTSB findings are. They will do a lot of data analysis. There may be airspace changes. There may be changes to those routes. There may be changes to altitudes. There may be changes to how controllers deal with other than like military traffic, or how they deal with the airliners, how they deal with circling approaches, how many departures and arrivals are allowed per hour. While you do have an excellent point, Badger, about the those are the things keeping us safe, we had a near miss that ended up being a tragedy, which means that usually there is something in there that isn't quite right. And there have been, there were reports from, the last couple of years, I think, of these near misses with these helicopters. And that just signals that there is a trend, and that means that just something needs to change. And it could easily be as simple as the helicopters have to wait until they are cleared through by a controller. That would be cool. Awesome. That's an easy change. Or something of that nature. Maybe that route is shut down. Maybe helicopter trips are restricted. Who knows? Again, not placing blame on anybody. That is, again, the findings will be what they are. But, we will probably see some changes. And that's not a bad thing. Because let's face it, the airspace that we have is really congested now. There's a lot of flying happening. And because of different procedures and different airport spaces and things, sometimes there's just a lot of congestion, and that leads to a lot of chaos. And with, like what Jim said, just the last few years of, staffing and just general stuff happening, that may play a factor too. We have to see. Well,
I think to wrap this topic up, we could go on this, I think, for hours.
Hopefully.
But I think the best way to summarize this is, obviously, we've focused a lot on the DCA crash, but obviously the one in Philly as well is pretty tragic as well. So I don't want to lose sight of that either. But at the same time, all we can do at this point is offer our heartfelt condolences to everyone who's been impacted: family, friends, first responders, witnesses, those people on the ground that had to have seen this, air traffic controllers that's their worst nightmare too. So our heartfelt condolences to all of those people who are affected by both of these tragedies,
including all the flight attendants and the crew at PSA. And all those military aviators out there, you keep doing the best you can, guys.